Hello, good morning. My name is Belle Hogg and welcome to today's session of the INNOV8 series. I am a senior service designer and visual storyteller in the digital profession at the Australian Public Service Commission. If you have joined me previously, you will I've probably seen this photo quite a few times, and you will know that I sort of go a little bit back and forward between different mediums. So on my iPad here mostly, and we'll get started. So first of all, I'd like to open today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm speaking from today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and of course, the best storytellers of all time. So today I want to take you through some tips to help you build a story, prototype it, get feedback, iterate, and of course have that punch and that real impact on the story that you're going to be delivering. So this is a bit of a rough agenda of what today looks like. So we're going to go through a little bit about stories and storytelling, story shapes or story arc, and then we're going to do some practical work as well. So I'll get you to be thinking about a theme that you might like to work on, and through to prototyping, a bit of a demo on how you can prototype a story, and I'll use my iPad today. And even though I do have post-it notes with me, because traditionally I probably would post it a little bit. And then of course the important part of how do you get feedback, what kind of questions do you ask, and how do you use that and iterate further through to that final real presentation or whatever it is that you're going to do with your story for impact. We have allowed the chat function today, so please feel free to ask any questions, and I will try my best between all my different bits of technology here to answer those as best I can. But yeah, most importantly, just really, I hope you really enjoy today and get a lot out of it, and you should be able to use this in many, many different areas of work and home even. So just get started. So stories, of course, they move us, they can make us feel something, they can make change, take action, they help us remember, they can increase empathy, focus our attention, so many things. I absolutely love stories and storytelling. And of course, emotional storytelling, and I've learnt all this through reading, watching things, going to different studies, and of course experience, but it can actually change your brain chemistry when you hear emotional stories. And cortisol is released, which focuses our attention on something, and oxytocin is about care, connection, and empathy. And they're the kinds of things that will happen when people are told emotional stories, so we'll keep that in mind. Okay, so the story arc. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about, actually we might get started on a video I think first. I think that might be a good way to kick it off. I'm going to show you a video that I absolutely love. If you want to look someone up about storytelling, Ira Glass, so it's I-R-A in Glass, very, very old, but there's like a 4-part series on storytelling where he's talking about things. But the one I wanted to show you today is actually where someone has got his audio and produced this beautiful video. So I'm going to get that kicked off and hope that it works. Nope. That's okay. I can come back to that saying that it's not supported at the moment. So I'll come back to that one. For now, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the story arc, or shapes of stories. So I'm just going to bring up I use an application called Procreate, and it's just on an iPad, and you'll see me working on there with my stylus. But equally as good, of course, to use paper, of course. Let me just plug that in the side. So the story arc is a very interesting, if you look up the shapes of stories, so there's a man called Kurt Vonnegut, and it's a really, really old video, and when you first look it up, you probably go, oh, this is really daggy to start with, but he talks about a few different story shapes. So you basically have this kind of line here, and this is kind of average feelings here. And different stories have different shapes to them. So for example, he talks about Cinderella as an example. Some stories start at a high point and other stories start at a low point. Quite often you might kick off with a problem, so you might start on a low point. So we can start down here, and he talks about you have Cinderella. Actually, she's probably about here, and then of course earlier on, like a lot of children's stories, the mother dies, and so she dips down here and she's feeling quite low. And just when she's feeling low, you don't think it can get any lower. Then of course the horrible stepmother steps in and the new sisters, and it gets lower and lower. But then of course, she's doing this horrible work and it's getting a little bit low again. And then, of course, she is approached by the fairy godmother, and so all of a sudden she's dipping up quite a lot. She's feeling really good. She's all dressed up. She's ready to go out. Someone's being kind to her. And then, of course, she meets someone. She's right up here and she's feeling on top of the world. And then, of course, midnight strikes and we're back down here again. So it's just an example. He tells it very well if you want to look up the video sometime. But he talks about it as shapes of stories. So there's other shapes as well. And you can see this classically in movies or books you might read. But we need to keep those in mind for our own, of taking someone on a journey, so it's not so static as, person gets out of bed, they go to work. Like, there's a lot of things in between that to keep in mind as well. Okay. Let's see if I can connect back in. No, the video is still not working. Okay. So what I might do is I'm going to, I can't even copy that into the chat. That's all right. So I'll just go on. So to get started, I want you to think of a compelling story that you want to tell. So these are some examples that I want you to think around. So today is more of a practical, so we're definitely going to be working on your story, and I'll work with you on that. So here's the kind of themes that you can think about, and you think about which one you would like to do. So we've got funds. So you might want budget to do a piece of work, or get resources, or go to a conference even. There's lots of things that you can think of. So that's around sort of getting money. Then there's change. So you want to work on, say, a wicked problem, or you want to create a product or a service to transform something, or maybe you want a group of people to join you and your cause. So that's change. Opportunity is you might want to change jobs. You might want to apply for a mobility opportunity. There might be somewhere where you just want to pitch your skills to do something. So that's the theme around opportunity. And then we've got understand. So you want to share an early idea for feedback. You want to help a group of people understand a situation. It's almost like that sort of myth busting assumptions. Research is probably a good one in this one, where you just want people to understand and have empathy to be able to design something, or you just have this idea for changing something maybe at work. So they're the different themes to keep in mind. Okay, so that's a bit of an intro there. Now I'll just pause there for a sec. And if there's any questions, which I don't think there is in the chat yet, so that's fine. Okay, so where we're going to go to next is actually having a go at this. So I want you to think about what's the story that you want to tell. So keep this paragraph in mind, and I want you to have a go at crafting what you want to write about today, what you want to be prototyping and having and drawing today. So it goes along the lines of, I want to tell a story about something so that I can do something. It might be so I can influence change in something or other, depending on what theme you're doing. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes. So we'll go to 9:57. And if I can get you to start thinking and just writing down what theme would you like to work on, and then if you can write out the story you want to tell just in this kind of paragraph, and have a go at doing that. And we'll come back in 10 minutes. Okay, now we've got about 1 minute or so to go. So hopefully everyone is working through that. And if there's anybody that might like to share their story so far or what they would like to write a story about, or it might be a presentation or create a video, that would be amazing. So I think we're probably good for time now. Okay. So if anyone wants to share what they've written so far, it'd be awesome to maybe hear a couple just to see what different stories we've got happening to be planned at the moment. So feel free to pop your video on. It'd be great if you put your video on anyway. I would love to be able to see people. And yeah, feel free to share. Hi, Ben. Thank you. Would anybody like to share theirs?
I'm happy to share, no worries.
Great, thanks, Ben.
So, guys, I wanted to tell a story about the development of the Office for Sport website. At the moment, the website's a sad and dreary, unloved, uninteresting page with not a lot of up-to-date content. It lacks colour, visual identity, and personality. So I want to improve the whole feel and the content of the website so that we can develop a meaningful spot for Office for Sport clients to access relevant information and know what, where, and how they can use, they can contact us and our division like in the future.
Beautiful. And how did you find doing that? Did that help?
It's still
hard.
We're halfway.
Yeah. And this activity, of course, is like tip of the iceberg. We're only just kind of planning what we think we're going to be working on. So is there anybody else that would like to share one so we can just see if there's lots of different ones? Go on, don't be shy.
I'll share, Belle, if you'd like.
Thank you.
It's Claire.
Thanks, Claire.
So I guess my story that I want to tell is that it's actually kind of a bit meta for this session. We've got some new team members and we've kind of like formed a bit of a new team. And I really want to be able to communicate the power of images in our storytelling that we do. We do a lot of research and we've got some very non-visual people. And so I kind of want to be able to take them on that journey about how important images can be and actually how important it can be for the accessibility of our communication as well.
That's great. And how did you go with writing your paragraph?
Yeah, I think it helped me kind of clarify the bits that are important. Like I just started really broad and then I was like, well, no, it's not just like that it's important that we tell stories, but like why is it important? And you know, it's not just about getting the non-visual colleagues like on the same page, but it's also about maybe like getting them to engage with adding more visual elements to how they communicate as well. So it's not just like them talking at somebody.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it helped me kind of refine a little bit.
Yeah, terrific. And yeah, like I said, it's just the tip, and you might even find that your whole story has completely flipped by the end of this session to something a bit different. Not too different. I love the story. Melanie.
Morning, Bill. Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I just wanted to tell a story about seeking funds for researching how our staff like to receive their information. So I'm obviously an internal comms, corporate comms person. I want to do this so that I can connect with them in a meaningful and engaging way.
Great. Good. Okay,
Pretty
that's
simple.
awesome because, yeah, quite often we forget that customers or, users are actually our own staff. Yeah, terrific. And that's it's two staff ones. That's great. Hassan. Oh, you're on mute, I think.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hello.
My paragraph goes like, I want to tell a story about SharePoint folders in the grants area so that I can analyze them and see if they can be arranged in a more practical way instead of having information all over the place. Have that concise in a way that any new user can, when they access a SharePoint area for the grants team, they can understand what's where and how they can access it.
And I think that part that you just said there is probably the why you're doing it, to make it easier for people to find things. Yeah, terrific. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So the next bit then, of course, is about focusing that narrative. So next part is about thinking, okay, now who's your audience? What do they care about? And what are you trying to achieve? So trying to achieve can be you want them to take some kind of action. So usually when we tell a story, we want someone to do something with that, usually. So I want you to think about who's your audience for this. And you might find, and I found this recently when I did one for our mobility project, that the audience was, something like 3 or 4 different audiences that I was actually pitching at. So that's okay as well. I think it's really good to recognise that you have different audiences. There's this awesome activity you can do, I think it's called Dear Queen of England or something like that, where if you wrote a letter to the Queen versus you wrote a letter to your child, what would the difference be? It's a very different audience there. So yes, think about who is your audience here. Is it executive that you're trying to pitch this at? Are you trying to convince or influence or, help someone understand maybe stakeholders or a project group, or maybe there's another audience, maybe you're doing something for home, and we had an example in the last session about little athletics. So maybe the audience is parents, or a particular customer cohort or something like that. So I want you now to think about, to hone in a little bit more on this story that you've got, and write down, have a little think about who's your audience, what do they care about, and what are you trying to achieve? The what do they care about as well. Quite often, research will always help with that one as well, which is why today's all about, I'm going to be showing you about prototyping something to get it out there quick in front of someone. But what do they care about? So it's not actually about us, it's about the person that you're telling this story to. What is it that they will want to hear? Maybe they want to hear, if it's a cost thing, maybe they just want to hear how much is it, but they also want to know the value. What am I going to get for this? You might just want to go straight for the heart, and this is a real heartfelt, empathetic type of thing to try and get someone to do something about it. Maybe it's a poor form or something like that, and you want to show that problem and say, we just need to fix this form, these people can't use it, that type of thing. So I'll just give you 5 more minutes. I've been rambling on here, but I'll give you 5 minutes just to have a little think and write down those 3 things, and then we can get on to the next part. Okay, hopefully that was enough time to have a little bit of a think about those ones. The next one, and keep in mind too, the mindset that for that particular exercise is empathy. So we're thinking about the people that this is intended to be delivered to. The next one is, what do you want people to remember from your story? So first of all, what's the problem? So you want to be able to convey what's the problem to start with, because it's probably the first thing, especially if you're presenting to stakeholders or executive or something, the first thing that people usually say is, but what's the problem? Why does it need to be fixed? So what's the problem is something I want you to think about. And is it easy to take in and clear? So what's that sort of, you want to be able to tell it in a very clear way that people understand. And of course, we're going to be going on to test your story. So you'll soon find out anyway, and that's where you sort of iterate a story a few times. And then, of course, like what I said before, what action will they take? What is it that you want them to act on? Is it compelling enough for them to go, yes, that's it, I want to do something about this? So they're the couple of things that I want you to think about for that next part. While you're thinking about those ones, I'm going to tell you a little bit about prototyping. So the next part that we're going to be going on with shortly is around prototyping your story. Just a very quick, straight up, something quick and easy, ready to share. So for the prototyping, I've said this in my previous ones, it's quick and cheap. That's what makes it so great, is that you get something out there early. They say fail fast and those kind of words. Some people are a bit scared of those words, but it's true. If it's cheap and it's quick, put it out there, let people, pick it apart if need be, but give you that kind of feedback. I personally like a post-it story board. I tend to write like 1 point per post-it note, put it all out there like an actual flow, and then I start moving things around. And it could be just one word, it could be 2 words, but how am I going to introduce this? What's kind of the main points? What's the conclusion? Or how do I get people to act and do something? So I'm going to, I'll just give you just a couple of minutes, and feel free to ask any questions while this is happening. But think about that, what's the problem and is it easy to take in and clear? So they're the kinds of things I want you to think about. If the answer to that second one, of course, is no, then what is it that might not be clear there? What might I need to clarify a little bit more? And the problem part, of course, coming back to the audience that you previously were doing on the slide before. And if anybody wants to share or they'd like to ask a question, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, have a little bit of a go. And we'll just do this in just a couple of minutes. And then we'll come back to having a little bit of a look at a video that hopefully will give you a little bit of inspiration. It certainly did to me. And then we'll take a short break soon, and I'll do a quick demo of how I would storyboard out something, do a bit of a prototype, and give a few tips on that one. And again, feel free to pop your video on only if you're comfortable. It's nice when I can see other people are actually there.
Hey, Bill, I just have a clarifying question.
Mm.
With the, is it clear and easy to take in? Are we talking about the problem or are we talking about kind of the key message of the story?
The key messages, yeah. So is what I'm saying, do I think that that's clear? It's going to be compelling enough, I think, is probably more to the point there. And if it's like, could be a bit vague, or I haven't got really to the point yet, or that kind of thing, yeah, that's probably what that one, yeah, is more about.
Amazing. Thanks, Bill.
No worries. So nice to see some familiar faces. Melanie and Claire, I feel like, have you been here for the whole 3? That's great. You haven't got your big, giant paper today. Oh, yes, you have. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for not letting me down. Okay. I'll leave it there for the minute. We are going to take a short break soon. So, and you've got sort of the notes and that there that you can come back to. But prototyping. So, like I was saying before, it's cheap. Fast. You basically are throwing it out there just to get that initial feedback. And 3 things to keep in mind.
No, it'll fall down. Yeah.
Maybe just mute. Oopsies. So the 3 things to think about are build and share and reflect. So we want to build something really quick and fast and get that out there. So that's the sharing part. Yep. Okay. And then we want to reflect. So reflect is all about reflecting on when we share that and we get feedback from that. How do we reflect on that feedback and move on to iterate our story even further? And of course, feedback is always a gift. When it comes to these things, we definitely want to get that early on. And prototyping. I absolutely love this topic. I could talk about it for a long time, but there's so many different ways that you can prototype also. So it doesn't have to be, I'm going to be doing mine digitally. I'm going to do mine on the iPad. But as I said before, Post-its are fantastic. They're small. You can only fit a small chunk of information. I even do Post-its. So my whole desk is covered in Post-its for this session, for example. So I actually say, I want to do this thing, and then I'll do that, and then I'll do that. And then I start switching them around. Actually, I think that should come before that thing. So Post-its are brilliant for that. Storyboards, amazing as well, which is what we're going to talk quite a bit about today. And of course, physical. So you can physically act something out. I know that sounds a bit scary to some people, but an example of when I've helped prototype something, which is basically put something out there. There was an idea, and I thought the idea had a lot of risks and it had a lot of problems maybe. And so I actually just got a group of people in front of me, and I read from a script basically to say, okay, so there was this person and they walked into the office here. And so I had someone in my team and they just basically just walk over and sit at a desk. And then this thing happens and you're able to sort of do what I call a director's cut, but I'll just say, okay, let's cut there for a sec. And then I throw back to the workshop, the group of people, it could even be your team, and say, so what would happen next? Or what was missing there? Or, was there a problem that wasn't resolved? And you can ask those questions. And it's actually just a really quick way of getting it out and getting that feedback on board to keep moving. So yeah, you can physically do it as well. You can use chairs or, salt and pepper shakers if you're in a cafe. I've done that before as well. Okay, so the next part, I am going to do a demo when we come back from a break, but before we go for just a bit of a quick stretch break, I just want to play this video. I'm going to see if it works this time, and I think it was actually a user error that I had it on big screen. Hold on one seckie. See if I can get it to come on. Looks like it's going to work. Here we go. All right, let me know if you can't hear the sound.
Beide Positionen, vielleicht richtig vorgefährdet für die Liga, wenn ich ehrlich bin. Ein ganz tolles Gespräch.
Nobody tells people who are beginners, and I really wish somebody had told this to me, is that all of us who do creative work, we get into it, and we get into it because we have good taste. But it's like there's a gap. That for the first couple of years that you're making stuff, what you're making isn't so good, okay? It's not that great. It's trying to be good. It has ambition to be good, but it's not quite that good. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, your taste is still killer. And your taste is good enough that you can tell that what you're making is kind of a disappointment to you. You know what I mean? A lot of people never get past that phase. A lot of people at that point, they quit. And the thing I would say to you with all my heart is that most everybody I know who does interesting creative work, they went through a phase of years where they had really good taste, they could tell what they were making wasn't as good as they wanted it to be. They knew it felt short. It didn't have this special thing that we wanted it to have. And the thing I would say to you is everybody goes through that. And for you to go through it, if you're going through it right now, if you're just getting out of that phase, you got to know it's totally normal. And the most important possible thing you could do is do a lot of work. Do a huge volume of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week or every month you know you're going to finish one story. Because it's only by actually going through a volume of work that you're actually going to catch up and close that gap. And the work you're making will be as good as your ambitions. It takes a while. It's going to take you a while. It's normal to take a while, and you just have to fight your way through that. Okay?
Okay, so I wanted to show you that video. I just find it really inspirational when it comes to a creative way of telling a story. The audio wasn't the best. I know they were getting a little bit arty there, and that's okay. I still love it. But what they were talking about there was when we're being creative, when it comes to creativity, a lot of us we've got good taste. We know what great things look like, and unfortunately we hold that on ourselves when it comes to being creative, where we're like, feeling a little bit disappointed sometimes in the creative things that we do, when in actual fact no one else is disappointed in the creative things you do. It's probably more yourself. Well, I'm talking about myself sometimes. So it's really important that when you are doing your storytelling and you're doing your prototyping, that you're not being hard on yourself, that you're having a go at being creative. But also I want you to think about that video and how they've just taken, a clip of audio and made it so creative by doing all these different things. So don't be thinking all the time, I think my point is here, that don't be thinking PowerPoint slide deck necessarily. There's so many options and ways to do things out there. You might be, you might have some Post-its that you show or you do with people to keep it interactive, and then you switch over to something. So just keep that in mind when we're getting towards that kind of final impact story, that feel that you can sort of get a little bit creative with that, and that will be amazing. Okay, so next up, I'm going to be doing a quick storyboard coming up soon, but what I thought we might do, it's coming on to 10:25 now, is we're just going to have a quick stretch break if you need to get a cuppa or something like that. If we make it 10 minutes, and I'll join you back here at 10:35, and have your paper and pen ready. I'll see you then. welcome back. Feel free to pop your video back on. Hopefully everyone has come back. And I'm going to get started on a bit of a demo of prototyping and doing a storyboard for an early story. Okay, so I've drawn up on my iPad just a really quick storyboard. So you can pretty much, you know, just divide up your page into squares just like this. Like I said before, feel free to use Post-its as well if you want to just use those, and you can move them around. And I thought what I'll do first is I'll demonstrate how I would do a bit of a really quick and early storyboard to put something in front of someone to say, hey, I've got this kind of idea, or I'd like to pitch something. What do you think about this? So I thought I would just maybe go with something that that we've been doing at work, which is a short-term mobility piece of work. So, for example, in this story, there's a person, and they've got this this piece of work to deliver. They desperately need a user researcher, and they're thinking, gosh, I don't have that that person in my team, and I'm not sure where to access someone with those skills. So you could just do a little person as simple as that, and you might say, I need help. It's a pretty big piece of work that they're doing, but they really just need someone just to come in and maybe just help their team. So to kick it off, I'm looking for a user researcher, and not sure how to find one. And then we go to the next scene, and they're talking to one of their colleagues, and you can see I'm just being super duper rough here. And they say, they're telling them all about, you know, do you know anyone? Do you know someone that could do this? And they say, hey, you know, look at this. And they tell them about this this website, and I'm going to draw a little laptop, and they say there's a website where you can post an ad. And of course, when I'm writing this, I don't have to put in a whole bunch of details. I'm putting in little bits because this goes with the conversation. So it's just something for me to talk to and for people to respond to as well. So there's a website where you can post an ad, and they're like, great, okay. So person goes over, has a look at the website, thinks, awesome, they got really huge arms, and they say, oh, okay, I'm gonna pop something on there for a user researcher. And I really only need them for, you know, maybe a day a week, because in this particular website, it's short term and it's informal, so the home agency still pays for them. So I don't want to ask for too much because they might not get released. So so I post an ad, and most importantly, I write about what the person will gain, because I want them to feel that by coming and doing this with us, that they're going to get something out of it. Terrific. Okay. So then the next part is there's this other person. They're a user researcher, but you know, they haven't been using their skills a hell of a lot lately. They've been doing some other bits of work that's not quite in their field, and they're thinking, oh, I really want something that's meaningful. And apparently this piece of work is working on a mental health project, and they think, wow, I'd really love to have some input into that and go out into the community and be able to help. So they're thinking about meaningful piece of work, and shameless plug here, they're a digital professional, of course, and so they get the Digital Profession newsletter, and in that it tells them about this this place on the members community where they can actually go and they can find short-term opportunities. So they hear about that. How did they hear about that? Newsletter, and they think, might have a look what's on there. And then from that, they think, wow, that's a really cool piece of work that this person up here has put on there. And so, of course, they go and they say, they have a little chat with their manager, and they say, you know, I'd love to do this piece of work. Can I? Would that be okay? Because it's about learning by doing, and I feel like it's going to give me some experience, and it's short term, so we've got to just pop that in there as well. It's short term, so I can still manage my work. And maybe we can include this in our next sprint, and talk to the team about it. And the manager says, sure, why wouldn't I? That's not necessarily what they'd say, but hopefully they would. And so then this person says, great, okay, I'm going to apply. And they apply for this opportunity, and they just do a pitch. And then they have a phone conversation as well with the person that's requested some help, and they get it. And you can see this story will go on and on, but I wanted to demonstrate for you of how I'm talking at the same time. And that's kind of how I would put this in front of someone, is I would say, not necessarily draw it out with them, although that's not a bad exercise to do either. And I've actually done that kind of activity I actually did it on this particular topic with my team when I first joined them, because I didn't quite understand what it was that they were doing. So we got together at a whiteboard and we're like, okay, and I was able to ask questions, which is exactly what you could do with your storyboard. Is you take this to someone, you walk through your story, and then, you know, they might be able to ask questions. So at this point they might say, say we go into this one where they're talking to the manager, and they might stop you at that point, or you might say to the person that you're getting feedback from, okay, I'm just going to pause here for a sec. What kinds of things do you think, what kinds of tools or guidance might I need to be able to talk to my manager to show them the value, to show them that I'm going to bring these skills back to our team, or what would sort of convince them to release me for this? So they're kinds of questions that you could ask. You could ask an actual releasing manager, or you could ask a manager, you know, if this was going to happen, if your staff came to you, what would you say? What would you be thinking? What would you want to hear? So that's just an example of a storyboard and how you can roughly go through. And as you can see, like, I mean, I haven't even put legs on some of them, but you kind of get the gist of what I'm doing there with my storyboard. So what we're going to do now, I'll pause there for a sec. Just if there's any questions at all, please feel free to unmute and ask. Otherwise, we can move on to having a go. And I'll just pop that on. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a chance to do your story. So use this time. So I'm going to give you 20 minutes because even though that didn't take me too long to do, you might just want to, I'm sort of used to working that way, but you might want to think a little bit more about your idea. So what is the story you want to tell? So use all those bits that you've been working on. You know, who's your audience? What's kind of those key messaging that you want to put out there? And you can use a mixture of visuals, and I'm happy to demonstrate any, if you're thinking, oh, how do I draw something? I might not know, but I can certainly try and show you. But if we put 20 minutes on the clock, so if we give it about, say, 10 past 11, and I'll give you some time to have a go at doing your own prototype of an early storyboard. And any questions at all, feel free to ask. Put them in the chat if you like, or unmute yourself. And enjoy.
back.
I've got a question there around, should we paint a picture of the current issues and problem we're trying to solve, or just jump straight into what the future could look like? Yes, absolutely paint a picture. I didn't in mine. I did jump straight in. I've made assumptions there that I've already had a discussion about what the problems were, but I would definitely paint a picture of why you're doing this. And I could possibly have areas of my story where I can weave that in. So at the end, I would maybe talk about in mine what the alternative was. So alternatively, I would have had to go out to a very lengthy process, for example, find a contractor, maybe go to market, that could take a few weeks, or do some recruitment rounds, which is lots of paperwork. Those kinds of things, I could either put that up front, or I could weave that into my story towards the end to say, you quite often summarise and reflect at the end of a story, where you say, reflect to sort of say what that story was about in a nutshell. I hope that helps, Chom. You might even have some tips yourself if you've done some of this before. Yeah, great, thank you. If there's any other questions, feel free to ask as well. I'm just going along here doing some drawing at the same time. And the drawing part itself can be a little bit challenging. Totally understand, like, this is a different way of working for some people. So that's why I've tried to keep it very simple. So don't be feeling like it needs to be really, swish and polished and perfect before you put it in front of someone, because the idea is to keep it as rough as you can, so that it allows room for feedback, rather than I've got something really polished and I actually really don't want your feedback because it's finished. So you definitely want to encourage that as well. And yes, Claire, I think it can also depend on how skeptical your audience is. If you know there are any concerns they have, it can be, absolutely. So again, it's knowing your audience. And you might not have a solution. So this particular story happens to be about an idea. So I'm more or less explaining, so it's probably more of a process that I'm explaining to someone so they understand what this program is. But a lot of your stories might actually not have a solution, and you can work with people to find that solution. So an early storyboard like this can be a great way, sort of that really good springboard into starting a conversation to actually get some ideas and gather solutions. And skeptical audience, I think, and I've definitely come up against that. I think, and I'll go on to talk about that in a minute, your tone and style and all of those kind of things can really come into this as well. it's really easy to, I think sometimes when people put on those kind of airs and graces, you can call that. If you speak as yourself and straight from the heart, people will find that more compelling than when you're, sort of get that robotic kind of, I'm reading a script, I don't go off the script. Whereas if you're having a conversation with them and building rapport as you're going, I think that's really important as well. Have you had an experience with that, Claire? With the skeptical audience? It's okay if you don't want to talk about it.
I think we all have skeptical audiences. I'm in a position at the moment where I give a lot of advice. And so there's a conversation that goes on in our team a lot about whether, I guess, the level of skepticism, if someone said, like, I have these 3 key concerns about, what you're suggesting, then it can be really great to come out strong and be like, okay, well, I hear those key concerns, but did you actually know, like, here are some facts that we think are important to consider. That's why we suggested maybe this solution. But I think sometimes when you're new to maybe like giving advice or making suggestions, you can feel like it's stronger to come across as like, well, here are key concerns someone might have, and here's how we address them. And something my supervisor has said that's really great is that it's kind of probably better to do that when you know for sure that those are the key concerns, because otherwise you really introduce doubts. Whereas like if you come across positively to like new people you haven't had a lot of contact with, you're more likely to just immediately have that positive outcome. So I guess it's all about, like you were saying, just knowing your audience. And if you don't know the audience, I guess the age-old adage, like you'll catch more flies with honey than vinegar, and is worth considering.
Yeah, and I think to remember with what we're doing here, this is kind of something that I would put in front of maybe safe people to start
absolutely.
with. Or not safe, like you want diverse perspectives. You definitely want that friend or colleague that does the but kind of thing. Research, of course, and if you can throw in quotes, or if you've done research, it depends on what you're talking about, but you can't argue with someone else's experience. That's their experience. So, perfect example, I spoke about my mum last week with dementia. If I was talking about something for that, I would start off with just a big punch in the face of, a quote from her. I don't understand what you're saying. What's a signature? Like you can sort of throw those things out there of quotes that you've gathered that really add that impact as well. And then that way, coming back to that question before, you are starting with a problem and you're saying there's a problem, they don't get it. And then it could be reflected back to them of what could we do about this? So, there's another question there. If you're working on a big major project, can you do the storyboard at a high level, as there are many stages to cover? Yes, of course, absolutely. And so your storyboard might be different chunks of the service or the product that you're talking about. I would also try and zoom in as well. I mean, it depends how sort of in the weeds you want to get, but this is very early on to try and get that kind of conversation going and try and find holes in things. So if it is a big major project, if you think about a customer journey map, for example, or a user experience map, whatever you want to call it, a blueprint, and there's different stages about the experience of the person. So you're always wanting to come from that empathy lens of the person's experience of that. So without knowing what your big project's about, you might want to sort of zoom more into each of those stages and be able to tell that story, and maybe you just have to take it a little bit at a time. It's very experimental, but I know that, for example, I did a project on a really big, wicked project on pathology, and at first I was kind of, and I can't talk too much about it, it's one of those sensitive projects, but at first I didn't get it. It was one of those kind of in design, you're always in that kind of crazy, messy, sitting in ambiguity kind of stages. And the first thing I did was storyboard it out. And I thought, I don't really see what the problem is. You go and get a blood test, no big deal. And then when I sort of storyboarded it all out, it allowed me to, say I was using Post-it notes, it allowed me to grab that one piece of the experience and take it away and use that for research to go, I'm not sure what goes on in this part of the journey. Let's have a little bit more of a dig and a bit of a deep dive into that. What is it? Maybe there's people that are scared of needles. Maybe, there's something else going on there. So yes, you can kind of, you don't want to be going into too much detail because you do want to keep room for that as well, for that feedback. I hope that answers, Zoe. Feel free to come on and if you wanted to ask anything more about that. And if you think about even a user journey in itself, so mine's quite, I'm going through my story here, but, technically the drawing might be, in fact, like a user journey. It might be, there's this person, but there's these other people involved. So you can do it a variety of ways. And then, the government organisation, is here. I don't know what that is. It almost became a Leaning Tower of Pisa there. And then you might sort of have, this kind of up and down, smiley face, dreadful, hated that experience. And then behind the scenes there's his staff and they're saying, well, actually, it's a hideous experience. And then you kind of go, oh, well, actually, this is the part here we want to be talking a little bit more about and seeing what's going on there. And you could zoom into that story, but and then behind the scenes there's these other things happening. And so there is a variety of way that you can do this as well. I'm just sort of sticking to one particular tool today with the storyboarding that I find works quite well. And it's 11:10. So is there anyone, it's okay if you don't want to, is there anyone that would like to maybe hold theirs up or talk about the experience of doing that? And Susan, the application I'm using on my iPad is called Procreate, which sounds weird, but it is called Procreate. It's a great app anyway. You're welcome. So we'll pause there, and yeah, if anyone wants to put their video on, show what they've been working on, any sort of things that you might have found hard about that or enjoyed, or it's okay if you don't want to share. You can see mine on the screen there, but. And just remembering, it is really early days, this one. Hey, Robin.
Hey, how you going?
Good.
happy to chuck mine in some thumbnails in the chat area if you like. If that
Yeah,
helps.
sure. You can even hold it up if you want. Go a bit old school.
I'll go a bit old school. All right.
Whatever you like, whatever works.
I've got drawings upon drawings everywhere. I don't know if you can see that. So that was me looking at the audience and the problem. I want to do a little video about the PPSR, which is Personal Property Security Register, over Christmas on social media to get people looking at it and make sure that we get more clicks. People care about not getting ripped off and buying a crappy car, and they're gonna at that time care about Christmas, which was a nice thought to have. So amongst all my other papers here, I started drawing up, I started looking at the idea of having Santa's sleigh go and conk out, which is our sort of fast approaching problem at the beginning of the story arc. Maybe as he moves along and comes along to sort of Sleighs Are Us kind of shop. And then there's a dodgy salesperson saying, yeah, she's a ripper, she's a beauty. Santa's not so convinced, so Santa goes and has a look at the PPSR and checks it. And then I had one more final little sort of coming home sequence of Santa going off through the sky going, yeah, I got a good sleigh. So there was a nice process to develop an idea fairly quickly. And yeah, I can imagine now, without terribly much work going into it, pitching that and getting the team on board with doing the production for it. So that was fun.
That's awesome. Your drawings are wonderful.
Oh, they're fun. I love a good stick figure too. I'm on team stick figure all the way.
And I like the analogy. Using analogies can sometimes remove from, you know, you kind of removing from the actual, it's like you're talking about that thing, but you're sort of removing it a little bit to get people to think differently. And yeah, like you said, you're picking a time of the year, people are thinking that way, they're going to pay attention. Yeah, that is fantastic. And no, you don't have to be good at sketching to do a storyboard at all. And that's why I've done mine quite rough, because yeah, I just sort of wanted to sort of drive that home that it can be, if for anyone, yeah, for anyone that's done the other two events that I've done, probably more. So the first one, which was a drawing event, purely about learning some drawing techniques. But if funny enough, I actually did go to university and do an arts degree, and way back in the old days. And I majored in photography and sculpture because I said I couldn't draw. And I can't believe that I'm actually doing drawing now as part of my job, but I just have never proclaimed to be good at drawing, and that's because I kept, you know, back to that sort of video that I showed before, we're hard on ourselves when it comes to creativity. And also, if you don't want to draw pictures, that's okay too. So back to the old Post-its again, just writing one thing down. I do it all the time where I, sometimes I do, we'll call it live visual scribing, not live-ish, where I'm watching a conference or a presentation, and instead it's just too quick for me sometimes. So I will just write a note, put it down, write a note, put it down, and I'm writing words. And then I look at them and I have a bit of a breather, and then I think, okay, how will I summarize that? If you're not sure, it's okay to just look up on Google something icon. So it might be, you know, transformation icon, and it'll show you universal icons, and you can borrow really. But I only show this sort of thing because it's quick and it's cheap. So, and when it comes to sort of doing things more on a computer or things like that, people don't tend to give feedback as well. So it's kind of like if you were sitting in a cafe with someone and you grabbed the serviette and you're like, oh, how do I explain this to you? And you just start drawing on something. It's like that. Claire, did you have a comment?
I thought I'd like show, I didn't do a drawing, I did post-its because I was trying to figure out, I guess I didn't necessarily have an arc for a story yet. So I was trying to figure out what that was before I started the images. And I kind of like, mine's a bit more responsive to potential issues that have been mentioned and like, well, how do we fix that? And so I came up with like the purple. Can you see? I'm not sure whether my video.
It's going in and out. That's okay.
So I've got purple like post-it notes down the side that are like, what is the problem? And then I've got like blue post-it notes for like, well, what's my response to that? And you know, like what am I going to use as like proof that my suggestion's going to address those questions? And then once like now I've got this, I have a much better idea of like what the arc of my story is going to look like. And so I'd feel much more comfortable like drawing it up. So I thought I'd just show that post-its are totally cool.
Yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, that's a perfect example. And I see Michelle's put something in the chat there around the SAP scenes, which I've used those as well. I'm assuming that's the one that you can print off and cut out. But I spoke at the last event about business origami, which is storyboarding with things. So you could cut out little scenes and you can just draw around those. You could either print them and put them up on the wall and draw around them, put them on the computer. And you can physically use them as well. Like, you know, oh, here's the email, and the email goes over to this person, and then this happens, and that same sort of thing. Naomi, did you have a question or comment or a share?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to share. So I was actually thinking about my story, and this really helped, this process actually helped me to identify the empathy part of it, I guess. So it goes like this. And I had to think about, you know, where did the story begin before I become part of the story? So it's, you know, our division asking, what is our data capability? There's a government drive to enhance data capability. And then we go into, well, we need to enhance and optimize our data capability. So that team then posts an ad for a data team and informs the division about their data plan and the new recruitment. And then we go down to here and they're like, well, we still need a visualizer. How are we going to visualize our data? And that's where I step in and say, well, I'm a graphic designer working in your division. Can I help? And then we all celebrate because we've just solved the problem.
Yeah, exactly. That looks fantastic. And how long roughly do you think that took you?
Oh, that was just within our time then.
Yeah, yeah. So it's quick enough for you to put that in front of someone and say, yeah, what do you think? They could ask some questions. Yeah, a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Naomi. Okay. I don't think there's any other questions. All right. So the next part that I'm going to take you on to is about feedback. I'll just bring this up on my screen. Where are we up to? So I want you, as I said before, feedback is a blessing. It really is something that you definitely want to be getting earlier on in your story. And these are just four questions that you can ask of people. For example, I did a storyboard and I posted it on our Slack channel back then. And I just put it out there and said, look, here's my story. You know, I can talk you through it. And I want to get some feedback. Is there anyone that can, you know, would like to have a look and give me some feedback on it? And it was fantastic because it made me think of all these things that I just hadn't thought of, because I'm close to the work. And that happens with us in our jobs. We do become very close to a piece of work and we get it and we understand the acronym or, you know, the language that we're using, all those kinds of things. But then actually when we put it in front of someone, there's a whole bunch of questions that come about from that. So 4 questions from this. So you can ask people, what moved you? What, how did it make you feel? Is a very simple question. And what was memorable? So what did you take away from that? What were you think, what part of that was memorable for you? What questions do you have? So afterwards, after seeing this, they might say, there's this part between here and here, and I have no idea what happens there. How would you do that? How would you approach that person? And then what do you think is the idea about? So what sort of, maybe the problem or the solution or whatever it is that story was about, what do you think was, in a nutshell, that was coming out of that? What was it about? So what I'm thinking for the next bit, it could be a little bit tricky, but with your story now, I don't know if you have access to another person that you could ask these 4 questions to and walk them through their story. It's okay if you don't. But I just wanted to gauge an idea of if people, because I normally would do this in person, but do people have access to maybe send their story to someone, phone someone, that kind of thing? And maybe just, I don't know, raise your hand button or something like that. I've just got a few. Okay. Okay, so we've got a few coming up there. So what we might do is give, look, it's going to be super quick, but we'll do, say, 10 minutes. And if we come back at 11:35, and in that 10 minutes, I want you to speak to someone, show them your storyboard or talk them through your story, even if it's just talking them through it. And then I want you to ask them what moved them, what was memorable for them, what questions do they have, and what do you think that, and what do they think that idea was about, or what was this all about? It's not very long, and we could even do 15 minutes maybe. Yeah, we'll keep it at 10 minutes, that's okay. So if you want to take that 10 minutes, ask someone those questions and see what you can gather back from that. And of course, you can continue this a little bit later as well to keep it going further. But it would be good for your next iteration if you can get a little bit of feedback on that. And I can repeat those questions and hopefully, oh, they're not up on the screen. Not sure why my screen's not up, but I'll organise for the questions to come up on the screen as well. So what moved you? What was memorable? What questions do you have? And what do you think that this idea is about, or this thing is about? So I'll see you soon, and I will get this organised to go up on the screen.
Hello. 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 Okay, Growly.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to do a check-in to see how you're going and if you need extra time. If you're still on a call or anything, can you just or need extra time, just put a little raise your hand if that's okay. Otherwise we can keep moving. A little bit extra? Okay. We might just say another 3 minutes and then that'll take us to about 11:40. Yeah, okay, no worries. We'll keep going for, if we just do say another 3 minutes, you can do more of this afterwards. Otherwise, yeah, and I'll keep those questions there as well. If there's anybody else that has already done a little bit of show back, and you have any questions, feel free to ask or comments or want to share a bit about that experience. Yeah, feel free. And for anybody that has got a little bit of feedback already, feel free to work that into a next iteration. So do a little bit of sort of reflection. What were you just hearing? What parts of your story did they have questions about, or seem to resonate with them? And did they understand the question? I know that wasn't a lot of time to be able to ask many people and get some feedback. And we can do extra time if needed. But it's a good time if you have got anything, like what I said, just to try and now do a little bit of reflection on what that meant for you. And then we'll have a bit of a chat about what kinds of things came out from doing that feedback. So Zoe's asked a question there around, would you generally have to give an intro to explain your storyboard, or should it speak for itself if you have the correct audience? So for example, you know, there's sort of that, they call it like the bar test or something like that. So feedback could be as easy as just showing it to some of your friends and saying, hey, can I just show you something? Tell me what you think. You would give a bit of an intro, but hopefully it really depends on which theme you were going with and how you sort of what your story's up to, because I guess at the moment it is very early days. Like what I was saying before, sometimes if you have something that kicks off with a bit of a sort of punch in the face, I'll say, but if you start off with something that might have a quote or that type of thing, your intro could be as basic as, I'd love to run through something with you. I've been thinking about this group of customers and would like to get your opinion on this. And you could ask them up front. So, you know, I want you to be really honest and, you know, I welcome their feedback. And so I think that's probably enough. And if they have lots of questions, you know, or they're like, I'm not quite sure what you were getting at, that's great feedback in itself. So you could ask and you could reflect back and say, what do you think? What do you think it was about? Or what was missing for you? And they might tell you something completely different, and that's what you would use for your next iteration. Hopefully that kind of answers that a little bit. Okay, so we might just leave it for there just for a moment. And I just wanted to see how people went. Were you able to access someone, and how did you go using that tool of a storyboard or an early prototype to talk through your story idea? So if you can put your videos on, if you're comfortable with that, would love to hear any experiences. Martina, did you have any feedback?
Oh, sorry. I work in the policy office in the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment, and we often get approached by areas that aren't so comfortable with their narratives, and we sometimes turn them away, or we sort of give them some other tools to help them come along the journey. But I actually think that these 4 questions aren't something that we ask ourselves often when we land a product. So I thought it was a really concise way to just form those reflections, and feedback can be really hard. People take it really personal, but I'm just seeing some really good ways to incorporate this as part of our closing sessions as well with teams. So yeah, that's kind of what I just want to say and share.
That's great. Thanks, Martina. I'm really pleased. Yeah, if anything, to take away even the questions that you can ask or that others can ask. That's amazing. That's really, really good. And yeah, it is hard to take feedback sometimes. That absolutely is it's a technique in itself. I know when I work hard on something, and that's probably why I do this, because I don't want to work hard on something for too long and then I get that feedback, or worse still, the old kind of build it and they'll come. You work on something, you build something, you put it out to even the public or your staff, and they all go, I'm not using that. And, you could have found that out in, 20 minutes or something from just drawing something up and asking a few people. Yeah. Thank you for that. Anybody else have any kind of things there? Yes, Claire. Yeah. So Claire's said, I think there are so many systems we encounter in government that could use this approach for that reason. Yes, absolutely. It's kind of along those fail fast type approach. And this is a very agile approach as well, human-centered, whatever you'd like to call it, but it is all about moving rapidly, seeking feedback, iterating, feedback again, reflecting, feedback, and just keeps sort of going like that until you have something that you're ready to put out there. Yeah, and did anybody get any surprises that they want to share when they spoke to someone else and shared their story? Was there any surprises? Was there any, was it hard to hear? Was it good? No.
I can just jump in one more time. Another reflection my group had, which I shared back to one of my other colleagues in the policy office, is that this is the first time that we've probably spent some time building that narrative in an emotional way and creating that connection to the audience that will sort of draw out their empathy or sympathy for the situation. We're very pragmatic about what we do, and yeah, that's going to be a big lesson that I've taken away from this. We need to galvanize people, but why, and why are they going to remember us? And I think the emotion that you can draw in a story is going to be the best way to sort of create those memories for them and make sure that they're invested in. We always talk about buy-in, but we usually view it from the SES perspective, not so much from an external perspective in the department, and how we can sort of increase our engagement with stakeholders who have completely different motivations. So yeah, just want to also shout out that little lesson there, and thank you for raising that and bringing my attention to it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really glad that you can use that. And I mean, we do a lot of, when it comes to our own staff, we do forget sometimes that they are clients or customers or just users. So even, our processes, we can use these things with our own internal processes that when someone, why do they not think out, why do they come to us with a not very well thought out narrative or that kind of thing? If you're in comms, for example, and you'd have it all the time where people come to you and they haven't really thought it out. It's probably because they don't know how to, or they don't have the tools, or they're not sure where to start. And to be able to empower them by putting it back and saying, hey, let's, here's some techniques, or here's some questions, or can we run through this and understand it a bit more, is always going to be more beneficial, that's for sure. Okay. So I guess the next part that I'll talk about as well is tone and style. So, I touched on this a little bit before, but when you speak from the heart and, with thoughtfulness and passion and that kind of natural flow, that always is going to help as well. Business jargon, acronyms, those kind of things. Quite often can take away from what you're trying to get through with your story. So, and even sometimes, like I notice with some stories or the way they're delivered, that people think, sometimes smarter means you need to be more formal, when actually you can really deliver something. And you'll see with TED Talks and things like that, those more interesting ones seem to be people that can throw a bit of humor in, or they can make you, feel sad about something, or angry, or happy, or you just believe them because it's very natural and they're speaking with passion and from the heart. So that is a little bit about tone and style. So what I would say next from this is we want to be iterating that story. So what's the next iteration from this? So, Claire showed us a great example of storyboarding out just Post-its with words on them. And now she might kind of use that to speak to someone and then move them around a little bit more, add more, take away, those kinds of things. And so at this point too, you now would be reflecting on that feedback. So what did I hear from those people? How am I going to use that? How will I take that on board and change my story? I mean, you don't have to change, but how will I, subtract some things or add some things, or, zoom into particular areas, depending on what they've said to you. And then you're thinking about in your next iteration. So I would now iterate that story. So you're redrawing taking into consideration that feedback. And I would say sort of 3 to 4 people on that initial storyboard would be a really good number to think about. And too, that if you hear similar things, so there's, a thing in research, reaching saturation points. So, I often hear in research like, oh, you've got to talk to 101 people, when in actual fact, you can reach a saturation point and you might have only spoken to 20 people and you start hearing the same kind of things coming up. So for that early one, 3 to 4 is usually a good number to give a little bit of an indication of some feedback. So next you would iterate that story again. So from that, the things that I would be thinking about now for impact are vulnerabilities. Okay, so I just spoke a little bit about that just before. it's funny sometimes, I've learnt before, or I've been pulled up on things. Oh, we don't want to get too emotional about it. And that, there is a place for getting too emotional, I suppose, but vulnerability is a thing too. And I think that it's okay that if you have a really meaningful story to share, that you actually show that you're emotionally okay to share that, and how you feel about that. And you want to set the scene as well. So things like you want people to put them in the room. So setting the scene can be as simple. Now, say I'm just going to come back to my story. I might set the scene by saying something like, I've got people asking me to get this job done. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I have no idea about user research. I really need someone to help me. Oh God, I'm going to have to go through a recruitment process, so much paperwork, and, like you're kind of setting that scene to where people are feeling like, oh God, yes, and the relating part. Yep, I can relate to that. Totally, I'm with you, on that. So that's the sort of setting the scene. And then in stories, you can quite often reflect that back and forward. So you might move between setting that scene, then something happens, and then you reflect back to it. And I spoke about that earlier, where you can come back to it at the end to sort of reflect and go, so, rather than go through all that paperwork and the pain of that, I've decided to do this thing, blah, 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 blah. And that could be my reflection part. Personal. So I think it's okay too to give examples, anecdotes. Personal stories always make it more relatable and more compelling. Even if, something like a staff thing, you might say, I remember when, I remember a time when earlier on in my career when I didn't understand this process and, and how you dealt with that or something. So personal stories can help as well. And visuals help to remember. So I realise accessibility wise that not everyone can access visuals. So audio, talking, they all kind of go together as well. But visuals help people to remember. So even if you don't want to draw this, photography, video, there's a variety of things that you can do. For example, on my story, I might go to someone's workplace and, of course, in a very ethically consensual way, ask, can I record them in their daily life, do a snippet of video of trying to do something, or I might be showing the value. So I might go in and show, here's a person that's gone on a mobility opportunity and in action, look at them, they're thriving, they're doing all this different stuff, and those visuals can help kind of back up and help people remember as well. And of course, creating an action. So you want them, what do you want them to do? Is there something you want the person to do at the end of this? Is it to tell other people about your thing? Is it to have a go themselves? Is it to approve, funding, those kinds of things? So that's all about creating that impact. I've got there, inspiration is everywhere. And what I mean by that is, before when I was saying about when you're close to something, it's okay to, I think, go for a walk. It sounds very, very basic, but go for a walk, take a break from what you're working on, because sometimes we're in it and we're so in it, we just can't even just get past that anymore. and it might be, doing something physical like just going for a walk. And of course, taking inspiration from other things, maybe, ask someone else how they would explain this, or get up at a whiteboard and start talking, to each other about various things. So that's that one as well. So just coming on to the next part. Where is that one? Sorry. There we go. And so with your final story, I want you to be thinking of different mediums, and I'm going to take you back to that that video that I showed you called The Gap. And that person, I just thought it was amazing. They had like sort of different mediums, and they'd collected different words and things from different places. So just thinking about that creativity, and that might not be relevant for your audience, but there is a whole bunch of different ways that you might want to present this story. I would suggest that the next part is you iterate another early on sort of drawing. What I find very helpful as well is recording your voice. So, and you can do that kind of anywhere. So I'll often just put recording on my phone because it's all in my head. And so I just want to get it out. So I'll have, maybe my Post-its with just a picture on them along, and, I'll get my audio out and I'm sort of recording, and then this thing happens, and, taking into consideration that feedback that you've heard. So recording's one thing you can do. You can do video. I ended up with my mobility example. I did make a YouTube video of it. They are stills. They're just drawings that, and I used my phone. So I put my drawings onto my phone as just separate images, and I inserted them into a program called Adobe Premiere Rush. Probably sounding very technical, but I would proclaim to say I am not a video person, and, before would say I cannot do these things. iMovie's another one where you can just pop the photos in, and then they have the ability where when you're on the photo, you can click voiceover and you can do a voiceover. So that's another technique that you could use as well. And then, of course, you have presentations as well. You can use slides. Adobe Spark is another one that you can use, which also allows you to do a voiceover. Actually, it allows you, to do like a scrolling story. So you can have words, mixed with images and things like that. So that kind of just takes me towards the end, and I know we've got quite a bit of time left, and happy to give early marks, but I think I would just open it up here. If anybody wanted to ask any questions or would like to, for me to show them any different drawings, or I'm going to put it over to you guys. No. We've got a comment there from Claire. The more modes of that you can communicate in, the more accessible it might be. Yes, absolutely agree. So yeah, it's keeping that audience in mind, but yeah, I always try to use a little bit of both. A discussion can always help to go along with your visuals. And all of these have been recorded. So the The first one from last Monday was actually a pure drawing class. So that has been recorded and hopefully will be available probably by the end of this week, I would suggest, on the Digital Profession members portal. So if you would like some more tips or help with some very sort of simplistic, easy drawing, that would be a great video to access as well. App tips, any other tools you would recommend from Louise? Yes. Another tool that I have used, which is a free app, is Cam Scanner. And if you have a whiteboard and you're doing something on a whiteboard, or your drawings that you've done today, your storyboards, if you would like to photograph those and have them very lovely, white, crisp, just black and white, Cam Scanner will do that. It has a little function on it. You take the picture, you click magic, and it basically wipes out all that grey and shadows for you and produces this nice black and white image, which you can then put into, I mean, you can even simply stick that in a PowerPoint. So you might draw something on the whiteboard, clean it, pop it in your PowerPoint, and you know, if you feel better with typing something, you can add that in as well. Any other apps? No, I don't think so. They're my go-tos. iMovie, I mean, I just love it. It's kind of free with Apple products. Might be able to use it on others, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's just really easy to make little videos, and I've actually made quite a few videos for things that I don't understand, because I teach myself, make a little bit of a little video, and then I share it with other people to sort of say, look, you know, if you're not sure yourself, you can use this one, and it'll help you. So that's good with internal processes as well. Tip with Cam Scanner, it might look like you need to pay for a subscription. Yes, you know, like with a lot of apps, they make you feel like you might have to pay. Yeah, it prompts you, but you don't have to. Yeah. And yeah. Any other questions, or if anybody wanted to show what they've worked on, this is kind of something that I'd love to do all day long, where we actually really, you know, keep going and going with this story. But yeah, everyone's got a different story, but I hope that you can use what I've shared today just to take away and work more on those. If you'd like to share them as well, a great place that you could get feedback could be on the members community. We can put the link for that in the chat, and it'll probably be in the follow-up email that we send out as well. But yeah, if you want to pop something on the members community and get people's feedback, that would be awesome. And again, I know that can be a little bit daunting to put something out there, but it's definitely the way to go for early ideas. Does anybody else have any questions, or on the apps, good apps that you've used? I don't know if anybody else has apps that they've used that they'd like to share. No. It's very quiet today. It must be the wind. If you're in Canberra, it's incredibly windy. Okay. All right. Well, we might leave it there for today. I'm going to put my details up here, and we can close early and give everyone back a little bit of time. Thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoy doing this. Hopefully you took something away from today, and we'll see you again in an event in the hopefully not so distant future. So thank you so much. Have a great day.